always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Follow the leader.
Oh my God.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a red spot.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken will urge the Israeli government to agree to a series of brief cessations of military operations in Gaza to allow for hostages to be released safely and for humanitarian aid to be distributed. This is also the position that President Joe Biden is advocating. The Gaza Health Ministry said today that more than 1,000 people have been injured, killed, or were missing in Israeli airstrikes that occurred on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then again this morning, saying that the airstrikes hit an actual school and injured thousands of people. A Democratic pro-Israeli group today is beginning to air television ads that criticize Representative Rashida Tlaib of Michigan in the first attempt to hit back on the airwaves at the growing caucus of Israel skeptics within the Democratic Party. And former President Donald Trump's two eldest sons took the stand today in a Manhattan courtroom in the civil fraud case against Trump and the sons, as well as the Trump Organization. Trump was calm. This is Donald Trump Jr. He was calm but defensive, seeking to blame accountants for errors on the financial statements that a judge has already found to be fraudulent. His younger brother, Eric, was even more combative, acknowledging that his place of business is big and complex and that he relied on accountants before signing documents. And agents from the FBI today searched the Brooklyn home of Mayor Eric Adams, that's New York Mayor Eric Adams' chief fundraiser, Brianna Suggs. Now, this is a campaign consultant who is deeply entwined with efforts to advance the mayor's agenda. The raid prompted Mayor Adams to abruptly cancel several meetings scheduled for this morning that he had in Washington, D.C. And Senate Democrats are trying a novel strategy to break Senator Tommy Tuberville's blockade of senior military promotions as pressure builds among his fellow Republicans and Defense Department officials to end his months-long hold in protest of the Pentagon's abortion access policies. Desmond Mills Jr., one of 5 former Memphis police officers charged in the brutal beating and death of Tyree Nichols earlier this year, pled guilty in federal court today to 2 felony charges of obstruction of justice and excessive force. He's the first of the 5 officers indicted on federal charges to plead guilty. And as a part of this deal, he will cooperate with a separate state case against the other officers, all of whom have been charged with second-degree murder. And a divided House today passed a Republican-written bill that would tie $14.3 billion in military aid to Israel for its war with Hamas to domestic spending cuts. Now, this is defying a veto threat from President Biden and bipartisan opposition in the Senate. Now, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office said yesterday that the spending cuts desired by the Republican-led Congress and laid out in the bill wouldn't do anything to reduce the U.S. budget and, in fact, would increase the deficit by $12.5 billion over the next decade because cutting spending on the IRS enforcement would reduce revenue that the IRS collects from what some call wealthy tax cheats. This is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I'm joined by 2 brilliant contributors, Dr. Karlos Hill. He is a professor at the University of Oklahoma, and Dr. Rajah Rahim. She is a historian of U.S. and African American history at Appalachian State. And in hour 2, we are going deep. We are digging behind those headlines, those stories that people are talking about. And today we're talking about the Republicans' obsession with the southern border and this narrative that they continue to push that the southern borders are open. Now, since the start of this year, the GOP and the extremists on the right have focused attacks on border crossings of the frontier with Mexico, blaming the continuing displacement of people from Central America on Joe Biden's immigration and migration policies. Now, Biden, according to Donald Trump, is guilty of recklessly eliminating our border security measures, an attack line that's been echoed by several other prominent Republicans and conservative media outlets. And the reality is these claims are overstated, and in some cases, they're actually false. In fact, the Biden administration's policies are relatively restrictive compared to past presidential administrations. But the resurgence of this false narrative just shows how central the idea of a border crisis and open border remains to the populist right, even when it bears a little resemblance or relationship to the reality. So what's really driving this border crisis, open border narrative that's being pushed by Republicans who are running for president, Republicans in Congress, and conservative news outlets? In hour two, we're going to talk to an expert who's going to tell us the real deal and why Republicans are so obsessed with this narrative. But before I bring on my guests, here's what I'm thinking in real time. I'm super, super excited today because the city of Philadelphia has finally picked the winning design for a Harriet Tubman statue. This is a statue that's going to go outside of City Hall. You will recall a couple of months ago, I talked about this story because the city faced criticism because it had chosen a white artist to actually develop, create, and do the installation for this Harriet Tubman statue. And the uproar wasn't so much about the artist being white, but it was really about the fact that the city did not put out a bid so that all artists, and particularly artists of color, could compete, could submit their thoughts, their renditions of what they thought an appropriate statue paying tribute to Harriet Tubman should look like. Well, now we have a new winner. His name is Alvin Petty. He beat out 4 other semifinalists because after the uproar, the city had to actually release request for a proposal and give artists across the city and across the country an opportunity to compete. So Alvin's design is called A Higher Power, the Call of a Freedom Fighter. So this is going to be a 14-foot bronze statue, the first ever of a Black woman who is a historical figure in the city of Philadelphia's public art collection. And this statue that Alvin is going to create will portray Harriet Tubman as a military leader and freedom fighter. Now, we all know that Harriet Tubman is one of the most famed abolitionists. She escaped slavery and then led other enslaved Black women, men, and children to freedom on the Underground Railroad. She worked as a scout, a spy, a nurse for the Union Army during the Civil War, and she helped to lead 150 Black soldiers on a gunboat raid in South Carolina. In this beautiful bronze statue by Alvin Petty, Harriet Tubman will be shown in all of her majestic power, and she's going to actually have her hands clasped together in prayer. And Alvin says perhaps Harriet Tubman is calling upon her faith or contemplating a battle that we know if she was leading it, she was likely to win. Again, kudos to Alvin Petty for having the winning bid, the winning proposal. Kudos to the city of Philadelphia for having the courage to say, we got it wrong, and to try it again and to put this bid out so that other artists could submit their rendition of what Harriet Tubman should look like. And I hope I get a chance, and if you live near Philadelphia, get a chance to see the statue once it is installed. And that is hopefully by the end of 2025. Stay with us. More of today's breaking and trending news right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
There's a new sheriff in town. All right, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union, weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580, weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time, that's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day.
In this hour, we are tracking today's breaking and trending news with Dr. Karlos Hill and Dr. Rajah Rahim. All right, Dr. Hill, a lot going on, obviously, in the Israel-Hamas war. And today, because of, obviously, the images that we've been watching, the reports that close to 9,000 or more Palestinians have been killed over the last 3+ weeks because of the air attacks and the ground invasion by Israel. We're starting, and let's also not forget the UN very harsh criticism of Israel. We saw for the first time today the President of the United States, as well as his Secretary of State, call for not a ceasefire, which is what some folks were hoping for, but what they're calling a humanitarian pause or pause to allow the negotiation for the release of hostages and to actually allow safe passage of some of these humanitarian workers who want to get some food and other critical items to the Palestinians that are trapped in Gaza. What do you make of this call for cessation of military operations?
Well, I think that's what's ultimately going to happen. But I think the language that I want to use is just we need to center the suffering of people that's happening in Israel, in Palestine, and that should guide what we do versus the military objectives and the geopolitical objectives of the United States vis-a-vis Israel. I think that's the most important thing. And what does that mean then?
Well, I'm going to ask, are you suggesting that politicians put aside the geopolitical issues?
No, I'm saying that they focus on the suffering. They focus on the suffering right now, because that's what, if we're going to talk about humanitarian pause, well, let's actually focus on the suffering that's happening in that region, and not at the same time try to weave through that these geopolitical concerns that, yes, I know they're never going to be dropped, but I think the language is we need to center the suffering that's happening and make that the priority.
Yeah, and I don't think most humans would disagree with you. I think I saw a stat like 100 kids were being killed, at some incredible rate on a daily basis. But I don't know, Dr. Rahim, if that is ever going to be the language or the way that our government centers, these kind of geopolitical crises. But it does seem to be a big shift happening from the big hug, from the unequivocal support that Biden and his administration gave to Benjamin Netanyahu. And as this war continues, and there doesn't appear to be a whole lot of strategy around what happens with the government if you topple Hamas, because Hamas, in addition to being a terrorist organization, is also the governing body in Gaza. And then, I've been thinking about this too, this effort to annihilate Hamas, which is what, the Prime Minister of Israel says they are on a mission to do. Do you kill 1,000 people trying to get to one? And, why aren't we seeing more, intelligence used to find where these leaders of the terrorist organization are and targeting, the attacks against them versus this just kind of blanket bombing of just bombing and bombing and bombing? So are you sensing some change because of what we've witnessed over the last 3 weeks?
Yes, thank you for having me. And I think we are seeing some change, or at least we're seeing a pause, right, in our aggression and our willing to support, or at least how we support, especially what we're seeing with the photos and videos coming out. I'm with Mr. Hill on this one. I'm making the call for peace. I'm making the call for us to look at the innocent lives that are being lost in this tragedy and this conflict that is happening and taking place right now. I think that is where we need to turn our attention to. And I do think that United States, and particularly the Biden administration, wanted to pledge its support to Israel. And I think they have not backed down from that. But what I think they have done is taken a pause on how aggressive they will be in their support, and how aggressive, I would say, we live in America, right? We're going to be in our support of this current conflict because we're seeing what is taking place. And at the end of the day, we now have to start asking ourselves, what side of history do we want to stand on? We have not drawn our attention to how Hamas has came to be. And I'll leave that for another day. But if we really start to look at how Hamas has gained their power and who has funded them over the years, we might start to really take a pause on the United States course of action. But again, I do think there needs to be a pause in the conflict and the violence that is taking place and the terrorist attacks that are happening, to me, on both sides, and to remember the innocent lives that are being lost. And if we're ceasing fire to protect, the innocent lives, and we're moving forward in the name of humanity, then that has to be our forefront, as Mr. Hill has stated. And I'm with that. There needs to be peace in that region, and we need to really come to the table and really decide how we can establish that peace, because this conflict has been going on for years. And at this point, there is no excuse for us to continue into having this ongoing warfare and this conflict in that particular region without us as Americans, putting pressure on our administration to actually provide peace for that region.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of talk about, and folks feel like, Professor Hill, in this moment, they have to take sides. And we've seen people through social media posts and, through other means, letters that they've written, open letters, actually take sides. And we've seen people who've faced consequences because they have taken sides. I'm a lawyer, and I've been in touch with a lot of law students. And someone sent me an article this morning. Some of the country's largest law firms sent letters to the top law schools saying, caution your students, let them know that if they are making statements on the wrong side of this conflict, it will have dire consequences. They will face dire consequences, including losing job offers that may have been made to them and not having an opportunity to work at some of these very prestigious law firms. So in that, even though I think there is a shift happening, Professor Hill, there still seems to be this notion that you've got to choose sides in this. People don't want you to have a, yes and, or, we see both sides kind of approach.
Yeah. Well, Areva, let's take sides, but let's take sides in the interest of justice. Let's take sides in the interest of humanity.
But wait a minute, Professor Hill, because the Israelis will say justice means you attack us, sneak attack, 1,400 people dead. Justice is we get to wipe you out. That's justice.
No, that's a decision. That's a decision that you've made. Justice, if we're going to talk about restorative justice, it's going to have to be a conversation. It's going to have to be a relationship. So there is that kind of justice, an eye for an eye justice, right? Might makes right justice. That's that justice. That's okay. We could call that justice, but that's not restorative justice. Restorative justice is going to be relational, not transactional. It's going to involve a conversational. It's going to involve conversation and building relationships. But
again, let me play devil's advocate. The Israeli, leadership says, how can we have a conversation with this group, this organization that has engaged in this heinous, reprehensive conduct? How can we sit down with somebody that would attack and cut off the heads of kids and rape our women and, attack us in our sleep?
And I would say, how are we going to have peace without it? And I would also say that's not those actions aren't representative of Palestinians. They may be representative of Hamas, but not
Hamas is hiding behind the Palestinian kids. And if you want peace, you need Palestinian, talk to Hamas, because they're the ones holding your children up so that we can't get to them. So we don't want to kill you, Palestinians, but if you allow yourselves to be used by Hamas, then you are collateral damage. And again, this is the argument that we're hearing played out by some of the Israeli leadership.
And I just think that if the goal, what if we want to take sides, or you say, what are we going to take sides on? Let's take sides about having peace. And if we're going to have peace, it's going to include some sort of dialogue, healing, conversation. It's unavoidable, right? And so you're asking, what is it going to take? At minimum, it's going to take that. And the fact of the matter is, peace has been possible in that region. It's just in recent years and even recent memory, there hasn't been. And so it feels like it's impossible, but it isn't.
Yeah, and again, I go back to these consequences, whether it's the students at these law schools, these prestigious law firms telling them, if you get on the wrong side of this, conflict, you will face financial and reputational and career consequences. And then there are those folks in Congress, like Rashida Tlaib of Michigan, Congresswoman, who now not a GOP-backed group, but a Democratic pro-Israel group today has started running television ads against her, trying to cause her to lose her seat. We see that happening in New York as it relates to Jamal Bowman. We see Cori Bush in St. Louis, Missouri has drawn a primary challenger. So, Professor Rahim, these politicians who are calling for peace and who want to respect the sanctity of life of all people in the region aren't able to do that without facing some pretty significant backlash. And again, this backlash against Congresswoman Tlaib is not coming from the GOP. This is coming from within our Democratic Party.
Yeah. But you know what? When doing the right thing and when preaching truth, it's always difficult in the beginning. And I think that's what we really need to keep at center, that people are calling for peace on both sides. People are understanding that we don't have to choose between the two or between the groups or between, the three or the individuals or the parties that exist, that we can all call for peace. And that peace means that people can come to the table. And I'm sure regardless of what side anyone stands on, that they want peace and that they want the preservation. I don't think so.
Right now, the Israelis want revenge. But I will also hold that thought for them. When we come forward, we can talk about, does everybody want peace? Because I'm not so certain everybody does want peace. We're going to talk about this bill that was passed by the GOP Congress that gives some aid to Israel, but says you got to cut the IRS budget in order to get the aid. I'm going to talk about what that means, and will Israel ever get this financial aid from the U.S.? Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
Boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your black. Follow the leader. Following the leader. Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Bounce is back.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union. Weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific time. That's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like your style, though.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
We are back, and in this hour, we are tracking today's trending and breaking news with my expert contributors, Dr. Karlos Hill, a professor at the University of Oklahoma, and Dr. Rajah Rahim, a professor at Appalachian State. In hour two, we're going to be talking to an expert about what's driving this false narrative that the U.S. under Joe Biden has open borders, and that there is a 5-alarm fire type border crisis. So make sure you stick around for hour two. But Professor Rahim, you were saying that you think everybody wants peace, and I've been tracking this very carefully since the attack by Hamas on Israel, and the Israeli military leaders who've been speaking out on behalf of that country have not at all ever expressed that right now peace is anything that they desire. They've been very clear that they were attacked and that they believe they have a unilateral right, an unequivocal right to strike back, to annihilate Hamas, and that that's the only way that they can maintain their peace, the sanctity of their nation, protect their people. They bristle at any notion of a ceasefire. They say that is categorically out of the question. So everybody's not talking peace.
I think everyone's not talking peace as how I would define it, right? But I think their objective is to get to peace, right? To launch this aggression and to launch this military effort is for them to ultimately bring about peace to the people that they want to apply that peace for, and to make their place and where they live and their lives peaceful as they defined it. But ultimately, if we both know and we all know and understand that each side wants peace, now we can come to understanding of how do we define that peace and how do we actually get there? Because the destruction of innocent lives, regardless of the attack that happened on your country and on your people and on your livelihood, does not allow for us to sit back and watch an all-out assault, a genocide on a group and population of people. That is what we're seeing. And I understand at the end of the day, you know, if Israel want to fight with an eye for an eye, okay, I'm going to sit back. I'm not a politician and I'm not a military leader. But what I am is someone that is a human who understands that all blood looks the same. And when it comes out of our body, it looks the same regardless of our race, our gender, our religion, our ethnicity, any of those affiliations. And what I see when I look at photos online, on our television, I see destruction of lives. I see children being killed that could be our children. I see mothers losing their lives that could be our mothers, sisters, aunts, other people, innocent young boys and men who are not a part of this conflict, who could be our brothers, our fathers, our uncles. And that is what I'm calling for. And if they don't want the peace that I am speaking as, you know, Dr. Rahim, which I'm calling for a ceasefire so we can sit at the table, so we can end the loss of innocent lives in this conflict, so we can really get to the nooks and crannies of the matter in which we all have been seeing for decades. If they don't want a type of peace where we can save as many lives as possible, then I'm going to look at the leaders of Israel and then I'm going to ask them, what side of history do they want to stand for and how do they want to be remembered? Because it's right or do it. It's what we have to ask ourselves.
You know, that's obviously the position that you've stated is one that is being stated by lots of folks, including students on college campuses. These legislators, like Congresswoman, the Michigan Congresswoman, as well as the New York Congressman, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush in St. Louis. So it's Rashida Tlaib in Michigan. So you're not alone in your approach to this, but like I said, there are folks whose definition of peace and how you get to that peace, differ dramatically, and even the use of words like genocide. I've seen some of the Israeli leaders who bristle at that, take offense to that, and believe that this is not the appropriate time to focus on whatever the situation in Gaza is and with the Palestinian people, because they believe they have an unfettered right to attack and to annihilate. And yes, collateral damage, as they call it, is happening. But let's talk, Professor Hill, about Congress, because Joe Biden has asked for like $109 billion of aid that he wanted tied with for Israel, tied to the Ukraine. That's what the bipartisan group in the U.S. Senate wants. But the many congressmen, particularly the GOP, they don't want to give aid to the Ukraine. They are opposed to aid in the Ukraine and have put forth and voted for a bill that narrowly passed for $14 billion, a lot less than what Biden is calling for, an aid, but it's tied to what they call a poison pill, or this piece of legislation that reduces a signature piece of Joe Biden's legislation, cuts the budget of the IRS, the part of that budget that goes after tax cheats and those wealthy people that don't pay their taxes. So, where is Congress going on this? That's a bill that's never going to get passed in the Senate. So what's the GOP doing?
It's what has happened, under for as long as I can remember, since I would say Newt Gingrich, but I think increasingly since President Trump, towing a hard line no matter what. We've seen that with Mitch McConnell and with Supreme Court justices, and how that just completely ignoring rules, etiquette, everything in order to achieve, a sort of Supreme Court justice in one's corner or one's favor. And so I think for me, it's what we have seen. It's what I've come to be accustomed to. And I think, honestly, it's what they think works. And I don't know if I can see the end of this. I mean, if we can see how, just think about this, Areva, and I know this is off of the question, but just think about how we have, with even the speakership of the House, the 5 rules, the 5 protocols, by just a small minority, and that seemingly was okay. That just was okay, and we picked someone from that really fringe to lead a party that's, I would argue, the most powerful party in the world, right? Because they are the majority in one of the most, if not the most powerful country in the world. So that's what we're doing. That's frightening to me.
Yes, normalize it. And on that subject of how we have normalized so much since Donald Trump was elected president, this morning, a author, a guy who's written a new book, and he was on promoting his book, and he talked about a passage in his book, and he highlights how Donald Trump kicked off his campaign, the second campaign, and he kicked it off at a rally, and they played over the loudspeaker some insurrectionists who were sitting in a jail cell in Washington, D.C., who were singing the national anthem. So they're blasting these insurrectionists in jail singing over the national anthem. And then they are flashing on the screen those horrific pictures that we all know by now, we've all seen, of the insurrectionists storming the Capitol on January 6th. So this is the guy that wants to be president, unabashedly saying, this is what you're going to get more of when I am elected. You're going to get more of this January 6th insurrection type conduct. And the author of this book, I can't remember what the name of the book is, but he was saying how the media reported on Donald Trump kicks off his campaign and blah, blah, blah. So normal, like that was so acceptable, like that has become, just an everyday occasion where people in jail are on the phone singing the national anthem, and you're showing your graphic video of insurrectionists storming our Capitol. So sometimes it's overwhelming when you think about what our body politic looked like just even 5 years ago, 6 years ago, definitely at the time that Obama was elected, to see where we are now. It's mind-boggling. And then to think that this guy who kicks off his campaign this way could literally win the election and be headed back to the White House. That's what's startling. When we come forward, we got to talk about Eric Adams. Eric Adams, one of his close confidants, was raided. Her house was raided by the FBI. And now they're talking about ties that he has to Turkey. Might the New York mayor, the second African-American mayor, maybe he's the second or third, be in legal jeopardy when we come forward right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Follow the leader. Oh my God. Follow the leader. 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 Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to the Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on the Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union. Weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time. That's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show.
All right, Professor Rahim, Eric Adams obviously has not been indicted. His home has not been raided, but a lot of folks around him seem to be getting in trouble, including this 25-year-old, I didn't realize she was so young, Brianna Suggs, who was a campaign fundraiser for Eric Adams, has her home raided this morning. And we're learning now that this is all about trying to determine if illegal funds were funneled into Eric Adams' mayoral campaign from a foreign country, Turkey. And so they've gotten records from her. They've got a subpoena for her electronics, like her laptop, her desktop, her phone. She also was given a subpoena to testify before a grand jury. What are you making about this and all this, kind of criminality that's swirling around Eric Adams?
Yeah, like with most of the cases that we're seeing around our politicians from the local, state, and federal level, I'm just sitting back and waiting for, the dominoes to fall and, for, the onion to really unfold at this particular moment. What we're seeing is at this particular time in our society and our history, that there seems to be people, prosecutors, and others who are willing to take investigating our politicians seriously. And I think as Americans, as those who put them in office and those who are voting, it gives us a chance to really reconsider who we're voting for, regardless on what side of the line they stand on. I think we all need to now see our politicians as human, see our politicians as people who's able to make mistakes, who are able to also be criminals, to take advantage of their positions in power. Not saying, okay, you're innocent until proven guilty, but I think this is a wake-up call for all of us, from what we're seeing at the bottom on the local level all the way to the federal level with Donald Trump, to reconsider who we consider our politicians to be and how much faith and loyalty we actually put in them to represent us.
How disappointing, Professor Hill, would it be if Eric Adams, there's so much promise, so much talk about him being a rising star in the Democratic Party, if he does somehow become implicated in this money laundering, for some, this scheme that the FBI is investigating. You know, it takes a lot to convince a magistrate judge to give a search warrant to go into someone's house to confiscate records and electronics, and then, you know, to get that kind of subpoena. So there has to be some, you know, high level of probable cause that a crime has been committed. That, you know, these things just don't happen, you know, regularly. Not to say that all raids lead to criminal charges. And yes, sometimes we know our Justice Department gets it wrong. And when dealing with Black folks, they get it wrong a whole lot of times. So I don't want to put too much on this, but there just seems to be a whole lot swirling around Eric Adams.
Well, let me say that in a different way, Areva. That what has happened is deeply incriminating. And and it makes one feel that this cannot be good. You know, this he's got to be involved. I mean, it's too close to his inner circle of people, and so, you know, I would hate to say it, but it feels like this is going to, as it unravels, place him more and more at the center. But the timing is always what's interesting to me. The timing of these kinds of investigations.
What's your conspiracy theory? Is Eric Adams making too much noise about those immigrants and he's pissed off the Biden administration? So they're like, maybe it's time for, you know, the FBI to pay him a little visit. Is that like, tell me what you're thinking about timing here.
I'm not Game of Thrones quite yet, but it is political season, right? And it's people extend or do not extend support when friends are in need. And so perhaps by not extending support, by not coming to one's rescue, one can see something in that. But nonetheless, but I think what you said is so true. This kind of subpoena doesn't happen without. And so this is beyond just politics. There's enough to subpoena. And so and
obviously he was worried enough about it. He was on his way to meet with the White House on this very important issue of immigration and immigrants who are, you know, flooding, he says, creating a crisis in New York. And he turned around. And that, again, obviously means he was concerned enough to say, I need to be back in New York City. I think the thing that's really disturbing me, I just read this article, this woman, Brianna Suggs, she's 25 years old. So how she gets so in the mix of someone as powerful as Eric Adams, you know, she's just literally 23 years out of college. So it's going to be an interesting story to see what happens with her. And talking about criminals, we just got a news alert that Sam Bankman-Fried, they call him tussle-haired mogul who founded the FTX cryptocurrency exchange. He was convicted today after a lengthy trial. He was convicted of all 7 charges of fraud and conspiracy after a month-long trial that laid bare what they call the hubris and risk-taking across the crypto industry. He faces now 110 years in jail. We know that FTX collapsed, and he was charged with stealing as much as $10 billion from customers to finance, again, political contributions, venture capital investments, and a very, very extravagant lifestyle. There's something, you know, I don't know, Professor Rahim, greed, capitalism, money. Who needs $10 billion? I think this Bankman-Fried is 30 years old, 31 years old. I mean, we all could, I guess, use $10 billion, but these are some young people we're talking about. Brianna Suggs, 25. This guy is like 31, 32 years old. Shocking. I don't know if you followed this trial at all. I was following it pretty closely. I wasn't surprised. I expected him to be found guilty. He had a pretty flimsy defense. But what do you make of, I don't know, did you follow this trial at all? Were you watching this whole cryptocurrency?
From a distance. I've always been a little hesitant about the cryptocurrency world, right? It's young, and what we're seeing is with any market, right? As much of it, there's rapid growth. There is some type of decline that comes on the back end. And also there are people who have figured out a way to make more or to scheme off of the system that has been created. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing played out. But when it comes down to it, I think we should understand that young people, we're just speaking to the ages of people. It seems to be that we're living in a society where everything has to be quick and fast, right? Mm-hmm. They used to call it like the microwave society, but I don't know if we can even consider it a microwave now. Maybe it's the air fryer, right? Where everything is even quicker when it comes to making these meals or making it seem like it's a delicious serving. But I think that's what we're seeing with young people who have seen their parents and their elders struggle and live a hard life, and who also live in a world where money is technically, or the love of money is the root of all evil in our society. And that's kind of what we're seeing. We're just seeing young people who have access to greater technology, to more information, be able to get in and to manipulate the system. Not all of them are doing it, but there's a handful that are doing it. And so that is what we're kind of seeing when we're looking at this particular case and just looking at everything else that is transpiring.
Real quickly, we're running out of time, Professor Hill. Donald Trump's two eldest sons were in a courtroom today taking the stand, and Eric Jr., they said, was a little salty. He got combative with the prosecutor. Any surprises there? Two very privileged white men having to be held or being called out on the carpet for their involvement with this fraud case.
I think that all of that is true. The entitlement is there. It's always been there. But you also got to recognize that he, his father, his sister, brother-in-law are constantly in court, right? And how irritating that is.
Right. Anybody would be irritated, no doubt about it. Well, we are out of time. Thank you so much, Dr. Hill. Thank you so much, Dr. Rahim. Always a pleasure to share some space with both of you. When we come forward, we're going to talk about this made-up, manufactured border crisis that is at the heart of the GOP's narrative leading into the 2024 election. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
Thank you.
We've got a lot to talk about. Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on